Scott and Camille, how did you find carnivore?
Scott is the one who really started it. He was dying, basically. Uh, he weighed over 550 pounds. His pulmonologist had diagnosed congestive heart failure and COPD. And yeah, his days were limited. He had trouble moving, just walking. He couldn't walk out to the mailbox without extreme exertion. And traveling was very problematic. If we went to any kind of an altitude, his oxygen level would drop. We tried going over one of our local mountain passes, and he basically passed out. And there were no services there, so I had to drive very quickly to a lower elevation so he could get some more oxygen. But that's when he started looking into things and came up with the idea of, keto at first and then carnivore as being a better solution. Scott, do you want to jump in there?
Well, yeah. So this was the fall of 2020 when really I hit the tipping point and was to the point that the pulmonologist said he didn't think I'd last until Christmas. So I had, weeks to months to live. And so he said I needed to go to bariatric surgery immediately. And the doctor there was in Spokane, Washington, Dr. Bright. He said, first of all, your insurance says you have to lose a certain amount of weight before they'll cover it. But secondly, he says, you are too large. I can't get into where I need to get into to do the surgery. You got to lose weight. And so I endeavored to lose weight the way I had always had. And I had been my degree's in biology. I taught biology. I taught health for the high school. So I just followed the things that I had always taught, things that I had done in the past, which is exercise more and eat less and kind of starve myself. Never worked well in the past. It would work temporarily, but never sustained. And it didn't work very well this time either. But I did last past Christmas and into January, but I wasn't losing the weight. And it was clear I was in trouble. So in March of 2021, I started to do something uncharacteristic for me for this sort of thing. I started to pray about it. And I prayed pretty fervently every night. And I started to get impressions. And in our religion, we believe that, you can get impressions, inspiration, whatever. And I kept getting these impressions that I should fast and that I should fast for 36 hours and that I should fast for 36 hours repeatedly. To every time I would like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I didn't think that I could do that. And so my on-ramp to my health journey, though, was fasting. And after about 6 weeks of this in mid-April, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this. And Camille is a wonderful wife. She's like, okay, whatever. I'll support you by not feeding you for a day. And so I did it. And it was really difficult the first time. I found it, and I think it was more mentally difficult. I was hungry. Of course, I'd been eating carb-centric diet, and so I had a lot of ghrelin and was hungry, but I made it. And then I thought, well, I'm going to do that again. And in very short order, I started having some pretty significant weight loss, and the fasting got easier. This went along for several months, from like say April into about August, and then somehow at some point, the name Jason Fung entered my social media feed. And Jason Fung is a doctor out of Canada, and he's promotes intermittent fasting. And I heard intermittent fasting, and that wasn't really on my radar of a health thing. It was just something that came to me I hadn't read anything or anything. It was completely on my own thing. And I was fasting, doing 36 hours, 2 to 3 times a week.
It was
So I
especially
started,
important to us from Dr. Fung, as he was a nephrologist and worked with diabetic patients. And being diabetic, it really clicked with us.
Yeah. Camille's A1C at that point was in the mid nine in the mids, 9.5, 9.6 or so. And she was, she was heavily medicated. She had 100, I believe 100 units of insulin a day and also oral meds for her diabetes, and still had very high A1C. And I had a lot of weight. So I read Dr. Jason Fung's book, one of his books, The Obesity Code, and then subsequently read the Diabetic Code, which is very similar, but with a slightly different angle. And I understood, because of my background in the biological sciences, I understood the mechanisms that he was talking about, and they made sense to me. And then along other I guess I could say luminaries, like Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Baker, and other doctors who have YouTube. And, there's some quacks on YouTube, just flat out quacks. But these guys all resonated as being pretty authentic. They weren't really selling anything except for information. And that's important to me. And so along the way, then the whole idea of keto came along, and we got more keto. And then I started to be able to walk. Someplace along that way, August, September or so of that first year, I'd lost enough weight I could start to walk more. Initially, my walking distances were half a mile would be all I could do, and that was tough. And so Camille was watching along, and she saw the improvement, and I think was pleased with it. So go ahead from there, Camille.
Well, I started walking a little bit with him too. However, I really, really struggled. And we had come up with routes where I could stop and sit down for a while. And I had to have a lot of water with us and such. Um, at one point, Scott had set a goal of being or wanting to be able to walk in the Bloomsday race/walk in Spokane, Washington. That was a huge goal that he had his sights set on and worked for over a year trying to get ready for that. And that
It's
ended
a
up
12
being
yeah, it's a 12K event, which brings in elite runners from around the world, and also about 30,000 walkers.
so. After he had lost enough weight, it took pressure off of his joints, and he had really bad knees. They're still bad, but he can work through it. And so that he was eventually able to increase his mileage so that he could do this 12K with 7.4 miles or so. And then the time came, he did it. And I watched from the hotel room, but he came across the finish line, and he was ready to give up walking for good about that point. But
Well, I'd reached my goal, so that I'm there.
right. But I tried to I don't know, kick him in the backside, I guess, by saying, well, I want to do it next year. So it kept him walking, got me walking with him, and we were able to do it together the next year and the year after. And we did it again this year. And each time our times have gotten better, and it's been fun. It's
Well, and
actually been
just
fun.
2 weeks to the day after Camille did her first Bloomsday, she had a massive heart attack, the LAD, or the Widowmaker. And at that point, she was walking, and she had modified her diet somewhat, but that experience completely changed our approach, and moved us more towards carnivore, because it was clear her diabetes was killing her. Her doctors had said, if you didn't already walk, if you hadn't been doing this walking, if you hadn't made these changes, you would not have survived this heart attack. But she did, and in fact, her number one concern in the hospital wasn't anything other than how soon can I start walking again. She
And
wanted to
they
get
kept
out.
then tell me, honey, you're going to have to spend the night. You might have to spend 2 nights or more. And basically, they had a minimum, I think, of 2 nights. They just didn't tell me. But I was there 48 hours. And then they really were able to release me because I was doing well. I was doing very well. And they told me I could go ahead and start walking, but not 6 miles a day. They wanted to limit me to 2 miles a day, and that was because of the incision for the stents, not my heart.
Well,
So,
in fact, their initial was that you'd be able to walk down the block. And within 24 hours after they saw how well she was doing, then they said, okay, we're going to limit you to 2 miles. So it changed dramatically just based on how well she was doing at that point.
That's
and they were shocked.
fantastic.
They were shocked.
So yeah, so she really started to, about that same time, she got a CGM for the first time.
The continuous
And
glucose monitor.
yeah, and the CGMs or glucose monitors are absolutely transformational, tremendously educational, because she could eat whatever, and then she could see in real time how it affected her glucose both acutely and also over the course of the next couple of days. Um, and that was huge. Now it's been so successful that now her A1C is down to 5.8, and she has no medications, no insulin, nothing. With diet alone, she's at a 5.8. She's been continuing to drop, and she's low enough that insurance will no longer pay for a CGM. You know, it's kind of
I'm too healthy.
yeah, she's too healthy. Yeah, it's kind of funny. You know, they'll pay for her to have diabetic medicines, but they won't pay for something to help keep monitor it now. But
That's
that's okay
crazy.
because
So, yeah, they'll pay for the medications, but they won't pay for the management to make sure you don't need the medications.
That's
exactly,
right.
yeah. Well, and it's very similar to the situation I have because they were willing to pay for all my medications that I needed. I had super expensive inhalers and such, but now that I've lost in excess of 300 pounds. Um, Between the two of us, we've lost 445 pounds. Um, and I've kept it off for years at this point. So I have a very significant folds of skin, which are monstrous. Okay. I mean, that need to be surgically removed. They're just on my thighs, on my abdomen. I mean, I've got some in my face, but that's old man face. And they won't even consider that. They would pay for me to have a heart attack, and they would pay for the $1 million or whatever that would be, but they won't pay, the few, I don't know, 10, $20,000, whatever it is, to have to take care of taking care of me. But that's kind of the way insurance works. It works against us, which is why we need to take charge of our own health, and we need to learn what is right for us. I don't, for us, for Camille and I, we've both learned that we absolutely can't eat carbohydrates in any but maybe the smallest amounts, or it has a penalty. Now that may not be the case for somebody who's young and maybe has a different genetics, but I think by and large, for a good share of the population, carbohydrates are deleterious. Deleterious. They're bad for us. They're hurting us. You can go to any grocery store and just look at the grocery carts and look at the body pushing the grocery cart, and they usually match up pretty well.
Yeah. I I I feel you with that, like for me, I'm the same. Like any level of carbohydrate is not good. And it's not just ultra processed carbohydrate. It's anything. It's fruit, it's nuts, it's anything. It's just bad for me.
I think if we'd have caught this in our 20s, and if we'd have backed off on the ultra process, we might be able to eat those things, some of those other whole food carbohydrates at this point. But we didn't. Um, we're beyond that, and maybe our body will heal to the point that sometime in the future we can. But right now, to maintain our weight, to maintain and improve A1C sugar, to maintain um, our blood chemistry, we can't. And even at this point, we're both years downstream from starting this. We still see continual improvements. We're continuing to see improvements with our endocrine systems. I have improved thyroid function and improved steroid hormones. Camille is improving with her diabetes, A1C, insulin control. My insulin is super low, and I do my own labs. There's a website in the United States where you could order your labs, and it's very affordable. And so while doctors they'll do it's kind of rudimentary lipid, I go ahead and I order the full NMR lipid profile, which then shows me not just how much cholesterol I have, but do I have the large, what they call fluffy cholesterol, which are not harmful, and I'm talking LDL cholesterol, or do I have this small bullet, they call it bullet cholesterol, and in my case, my cholesterol would be considered elevated in terms of total volume, but my cholesterol profile is that I have very benign or actually even good for me cholesterol.
Now, last
Yeah.
time we were talking about blowback, and the medical profession has given us a great deal of blowback. Um, Scott's primary care physician argued with him about getting his own blood work done. And he was very, very against us taking charge of our own health. And he said something about, well, yeah, you've lost a little bit of weight. And it's like, excuse me?
A little bit.
A little bit of weight. And we no longer see that doctor. We found another one that we really like. And she's younger. She listens to us. And she really didn't know much about carnivore. But after the initial visit, she was certainly willing to look into it. And I don't know if she agrees or not totally, but she supports us in it. And she's saying, you can't argue with improved health. So, yeah, we're
Right.
pleased with that. Now, he found a file of a list of my medications. And about 10 years ago or so, I was taking 40 tablets a day. 40, yes.
Prescription.
Prescription. And now I still take too many, but we've cut it way, way, way back. I'd have to look, but I take maybe 6 or 8, and we're still working on getting it down. Now that's caused problems with other doctors, like my cardiologist, and he says, "Well, you have high cholesterol, you have high triglycerides, you absolutely, positively have to take a statin," and we refuse to take statins. And then he wanted to increase my blood pressure medication. And it's like, it's just high today. I've been monitoring it. My other doctors think it's okay. And no, he insisted I needed to take more. Well, he wouldn't look at my records of my blood pressure. I ended up being labeled a difficult patient, and he discharged me from the practice. And I can't see any of his colleagues either because I'm difficult. I will not take the medications that he is
She
prescribing.
literally got a certified letter, which she had to sign for in the mail, discharging her from his practice. You're no longer there.
That's shocking. The doctor's like, I don't want to listen. I don't want to think. You're gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in my last appointment, he was just really hung up on the triglycerides and blood pressure. He made no mention of my glucose, my diabetes, and it's like, this is what's caused the problem. He wouldn't even talk about it. And yeah. So I also found out that when they send you a survey after your visit, if you're honest, they don't like it. So yeah, I was maybe brutally honest, and I talked about the vending machines in the lobby that sold junk food and wasn't a very good example. Blah blah blah. But anyway, so I no longer see that cardiologist.
So as far as our diet goes, though, now we've never gone 100% long term pure carnivore. I know there's those who say that you absolutely have to do that, and I call them gatekeepers, and they want to prescribe what other people should do. We are mostly carnivore most days, but for example, on Mondays, my father, who lives kind of near us, we've eaten dinner with him every day, every Monday for decades. It's kind of a family thing. He's not on board, and so he eats. We may have some broccoli with him, or maybe cauliflower. But again, we're not eating. He eats a lot of other stuff that we don't eat. I mean, but when we make dinner for him, we'll have a few carbohydrates, but it's not a big deal. And again, being a biologist, I always go back to what carnivore is in the wild. When a wildlife biologist says carnivore, even lions eat grass, and they don't know why that lions eat grass. But even lions, I mean, they don't graze, but there's a lot of video of lions eating grass. Carnivores also take in some vegetable matter, and we take in a little bit, but by and large, like tonight, we're going to have pot roast. That's all, just pot roast. And that's great. But if we wanted to really dress it up, we might have cottage cheese with it, which again is carnivore. So that's normal. That's
Nice.
okay.
Now
And
we
are you typically eating twice a day?
Generally, yeah, yeah. We go out in the morning and we walk 6 miles, and then we usually will have something like a meat and eggs, and then late afternoon or evening we'll have usually our big meal of the day. And that's kind of the way it was last year as well. We've kind of stabilized in that. That's become very much our lifestyle.
and we're not really doing long fasts anymore like we used to. For the last year, we've done 36-hour fasts once a week, usually
Yeah.
on Sundays. And now we're moving to more of an OMAD on one meal a day on Sundays, and that works. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have a different routine. We eat, well, Scott eats fish like sardines or mackerel, and I can do salmon. Um, and a lot of times I just eat avocados for that day. So, and eggs.
Yeah. And when she says I
Ice
eat,
cream.
she says I eat fish, salmon, usually sardines or mackerel. That's all I eat all day long. And it's been very interesting what it's done for my cravings. I actually find myself, and we're, I don't know, 8 or 9 months downstream on doing this. I actually find when I get like a hankering for something to eat or a craving, it's for sardines, which is bizarre to me. But the sardine, the profile of sardines, nutritional profile is phenomenal. Very high protein, very your proteins, your fats. It's really really good. You can eat all the sardines you want in a day, or you could stomach, as the case may be, and your calories are also going to be kind of low. But having said, I don't eat. The sardines or mackerel I eat are all fillets, and I don't eat the ones with bones and skin. I don't find that too yummy. But I generally turn it into like you would do with the tuna salad. I mix it up with some olive oil, and that's my
Oh,
that's
nice. So, can I just clarify something? You said every day before you eat your first meal, you're both walking 6 miles.
Mhm.
yes.
Could you
It's
have
just
imagined that 2 years ago?
yeah. You
Never.
know, mi- so I'm today was my 833rd consecutive day of doing that, and it started. I had already was walking most every day before that, and then I got MRSA in my big toe because I'd lost a toenail, and it got infected. And so when I came off of that MRSA infection, I didn't intend to have a streak, but I got 100 or so days downstream, and I looked and it said, wow, I've got 100 days. And then, oh, I've gone 200 days. And so I've gone a whole year and I haven't missed a day. And in our climate, it was 105 degrees yesterday, Fahrenheit. I don't know, what is that, close to 37, 38 C, something like that. And in the wintertime, we get down to, well below zero Celsius. We get down to about, what do we get down to? About 20 degrees Fahrenheit this year, which is, I don't know, that maybe that's
It
10
hit
below
single
C.
digits a couple days.
Yeah.
That's
And
cold.
we, yeah. And so we have good climate, we have good storms, and we get some crazy rain. We get some fierce winds here, 70, 80 miles an hour sometimes. And yet we go it every single day. And then, in addition to that, I punctuate my daily routine with an annual walking marathon, which I just did last week. Although this time I'm gonna have a little badge of courage. I'm gonna lose a toenail off of this one, but
So, wow. And so how many years have you done the marathon now?
this is the third year. I've done it 8 times.
Wow.
The first year I did it 6 times. I did one a month. Okay, that's excessive. It was a little
And
bit much.
just to clarify, this is from a starting position of 550 pounds.
Well, I was 550 pounds well before I ever started marathoning.
Right,
I
right.
mean, I was down into the low 200s before I ever did a marathon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the diet had been helping you for a period of time before
Oh yeah. I
before
lost
you.
weight before I walked. I literally could not walk when I was that heavy. And I probably started to walk when I'd probably dropped 150 to 200 pounds, and I began walking. And initially, I've gone back and looked at it, and it kind of looks, from this perspective, it looks kind of pathetic. My first attempts were, it was like a half a mile for a month, a day for a month. And then I got it up to, three-quarters of a mile. Um, and then I kind of got to the point where I was able to jump it up. And we've got a great 6 mile routine. When once in a while we punctuate it with a hike. We've got a mountain behind our house. We'll walk up that, and it gives us about 9 miles. There's another mountain just the other way, which gives us about 12 miles, which we do that just to change it up once in a while. But it's the consistency. And I think it's a consistency in our physical activity as well as a consistency in our diet. We don't have cheat days either with walking or with diet. A cheat day just doesn't work for us.
Can I tell him about a cheat day on my birthday? Scott wanted
Oh,
to surprise me. It was 2.5 years ago because I used to love eating Oreo cookies. And so he bought me a small package that had 4 cookies in it for my birthday.
and this was after she had a CGM.
And my blood glucose instantly jumped over 300. And it stayed high for quite a while. It took days to really recover and get back to a reasonable level.
And that's largely why we don't do cheat days, is because
Right.
there is a penalty to pay. It's not a 1 day penalty. That penalty lasts for quite some time
And
because your
we
body then.
discovered, though, that the exercise, the walking, is not how we lost weight. We lost weight because of the changes in the kitchen. The changes in the kitchen allowed us to be able to walk.
However, the walking really helps with our mental outlook. I think it helps with that a lot. And that's worth mentioning too. The list of health challenges that we have overcome in the course of changing our diet. These weren't even anticipated. There are some that are like little, like my psoriasis are gone, my athlete's foot's gone, skin tags are gone. Okay, that's fine. But then there's some that are major. I was on SSRI antidepressants for 4 decades, and I'm no longer on SSRIs. And the way that came to be is I was also on anti-anxiety medications, and those medications were on demand. So I realized, gee whiz, I have not filled my prescription in a long time, and I just noticed I hadn't filled it, and I hadn't been using them. And then I read a book called Brain Energy by a Harvard psych named Chris Palmer. Fantastic book, highly recommended. And he looked at the metabolic implications for mental disorders, all kinds of mental disorders. But I was keenly interested in depression. And so, with the knowledge I got from that, and I went through it a couple of times, and I actually briefly corresponded with him via Twitter, X, whatever. And I went ahead and over a 5 month period of time, I ramped myself off of the SSRIs. Very difficult process and very dangerous. I wouldn't recommend anybody else do it because I wouldn't want to be responsible for recommending it. It is very, very tough. It was tough on me. It was probably equally tough on Camille because it was tough on anybody around me probably. But ultimately, I completely weaned myself from the SSRIs, and although I still have emotional penalties to pay for taking them because they had muted my emotions for so many years, I had to learn to manage emotions from scratch.
The highs and the lows.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I will weep at anything triumphant. I mean, and it's overwhelming um, because it's just, I'll weep at anything sad. But that's normal. And for a while, I felt goofy getting all weepy, but now I'm not saying I'm good with it, but I understand that it's part of what happens. It's, if I like, sometimes I'll be relating my story and I'll get to the part where it's really powerful and it's overwhelming. It's truly overwhelming. And that's, I believe, is just a penalty of having been on those drugs for so many years. But I now have a fuller range of emotions. Initially, when I got off of them, I pretty much only knew sadness and anger. I mean, initially it was for a while and um, a little bit manic at times. But now I have a full range of emotions and a much better handle on, not a perfect handle, but a much better handle on day to day.
Wow, that's so interesting. So there's this massive impact, not just on, day to day taking those kind of medications. It's like that long-term muting impact as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and other, that was dramatic, but fibromyalgia is another disorder that affects a lot of people. And Camille was very significantly impacted by fibromyalgia. And her fibromyalgia is all but gone. Her arthritis is almost
Much,
entirely
much less.
much improved. And she had an anaphylactic reaction to nuts, tree nuts. And she now can eat tree nuts. I don't know if it's because her whole body inflammation is resolved or what, but she is fine. She enjoys eating tree nuts. Not
Once
again
in a while.
once in a while. Yeah, it's um, so just a tremendous number of challenges that most people attribute to being okay. I'm getting older. This is what I got to put up with. But we have resolved so many of those issues. I don't take any inhalers anymore. COPD is gone. Congestive heart failure is gone.
My
Depression's
asthma's
gone.
gone.
Asthma's gone. Yeah. She used to, if it would get like near freezing here, which would be, say 0 C, she would have, and she'd go outside, she would have like asthma issues, pretty serious ones, and have to use an inhaler. And now she's out walking this year into the upper teens, which is, about 10 degrees below 0 C. And she's out and she's able to walk and do our daily walks. I mean, we get pretty bundled up for that, but that's not a problem anymore. Somebody would be chewing a mint gum in the same room with her, would set off her asthma because she had a mint allergy as well, and that's no longer an issue. Completely gone.
Wow. So, Camille and Scott, to have so many things improve, um, it's obviously like all these things are either directly or indirectly related to the diet that we have.
Mhm.
When you hear people saying things like, diet's got nothing to do with it, or doing carnivore is crazy, how does that make you feel?
I feel sorry
Well,
for them.
yeah, they don't. They can't make me feel anything. I choose to feel, and I feel sorry for people who are so close-minded that they can't accept that what they know isn't necessarily correct. Because I literally sometimes I feel complicit with the big food, because as a health teacher, I taught to eat lots of grains, and I taught the exact things that I learned later, and I believed it. And I've learned later were completely wrong, at least for me. At least for my genetics and my makeup and my background.
One of our
It,
sons uh, also took on this health goal, and he has lost 95 pounds,
yeah,
improved his physical strength to the point that he was able to start a new career. He's wanted to get into law enforcement, and he's made it. He's almost to his 1 year point, and
Oh,
a
fantastic.
whole new world for him.
well, and as a result of I post some on Facebook, although you get a lot of blowback from your friends when you post this kind of stuff, because it's counter to their beliefs, counter to what their mama taught them, you know. Um, and you get a lot of blowback. But some people have noticed, and one man that I knew um, back, a number of years ago. Okay, he came to me in August, and he was like, He says, I need to talk to you. He says, I'm really, really worried. My health is bad. His A1C was through the roof. His glucose was like just normally 300 or better, just really, really high. And was fairly heavy. And so I said, well, first of all, I'm not a doctor. Can't tell you what to do, but this is what I've done. And he's done much the same, and nowhere near as much as us. He was not gone carnivore. He's very much in keto, but pretty stringent keto. He's not eating the things that say keto at the store, because they really aren't. That's just marketing. But he's eating whole foods, and he's last I knew he had lost 90 pounds, and he had resolved several serious concerning health issues, and he dropped his A1C even more than Camille dropped hers. But he's younger, and probably more flexible, and he's done really well.
And his doctors are just befuddled how he could possibly do that without medication.
Yeah, they want him to take medication, and he's kind of amused by how dismayed his doctors are.
It's really quite strange when you see your doctor, you say, I'm doing so much better. And look at my numbers, look at my weight, look at my energy, look at all this stuff. I'm sleeping better. And the doctor's kind of just shaking their head like, no, I can't. This is bad for you.
And
And
they
They're,
it's
they're
still
like
very
ask,
dis-
they
there's
still
a
ask, are you
barrier.
eating?
they're,
Are you
they're
eating a low fat diet? Are you, have you considered going vegetarian?
yeah, they're very dismissive of anything that's contrary to their paradigm, to what they were taught. And I, that's why it's refreshing to see somebody like Ken Berry, who's who is actually changed. Ken Berry was he called it the proper human diet on his YouTube channel, which was very keto. It was not carnivore, and yet over time he continued to modify, and now he's full carnivore. But he doesn't say everybody else should be. He's like, you need to do based upon what you can do, and he incorporates things like social appropriateness. because you don't want to make your friends feel awkward. And so, you can put that broccoli or whatever on your plate and cut a piece of it off and just push it around and pretend like you're eating it.
I think his one of his key lines is the best diet is the one you can stick with.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah,
and I would add stick with consistently.
Consistently. Yeah.
it's like you're talking about, it's the lifestyle you've got now where you're walking every day, and it's not a thing where we have cheat days or whatever, or days off. It's like it just feels good, it feels comfortable for you, it feels normal, it's what you want to do, right? And the same goes for diet.
Well, some days when it's 20 degrees outside, I don't really want to do it, but I do it anyway because I know I'll feel better when I've done it. And there's a lot of days when we'll go into a fast, and I'm like, I don't really want to fast, but I know tomorrow I'll be glad that I did. And so, if somebody's looking at this and saying, "Well, I don't really want to do it," ask yourself, "Are you going to be glad you did in the long run?" And whether it's carnivore, I mean, anybody can go carnivore for 60 days and try it out. And in fact, I should mention our neighbors on both sides of us have also changed their lifestyle. Um, on the east side of he's completely carnivore, and she's now mostly carnivore, and they've seen benefits. To the west side, they're not really carnivore, but they have gone whole foods, and they're more, they get grass-fed beef, and they go for whole milk or raw milk, and these sorts of things, and they've improved their health. And so it's, I think it's important that we shift. And the only reason that Camille and I are kind of homebodies, the only reason we would even come on a podcast is if it potentially can help somebody else. That's the goal for us. I mean, I'm not an evangelist trying to, because I don't want people to be buying meat. That just drives the price of the meat up, which makes it harder for me. I don't want the world to be carnivore. Um, it's like the price of tallow has gone up since in the last few months here. RFK has really made tallow kind of a discussion point. And, my a friend of mine who has a food truck that's fish and chips, he's like, yeah, the price of tallow is up, like $200 for whatever unit is that he buys. And, he can do other oils. He can even do a tallow mix for half that price. But we want to talk
We
Yeah,
about yeah,
it's
Camille, you
kind
want to
of
talk about
the
that?
kind of like the Oprah effect, where blueberries are a superfood suddenly and they sell out everywhere.
Yes.
It's like tallow's now the same.
Yeah. Camille, you want to talk about how we've changed our fasts?
In just a second, I will. Last week I had blisters on my feet, and so I missed a few days of walking. Scott went out and walked anyway. And one morning, somebody behind him said, "Sir, how's your wife doing? I've noticed she's not with you." So people are watching us. People that we don't even know, they're watching us and taking note. So, okay, back to the oils and things. I think last time we spoke with you, we were really eliminating the seed oils. We're getting into the avocado and olive oils and such. We made flavored olive oils, which we enjoyed for a while. But now we've kind of moved away into the area of tallow, sometimes bacon fat, but tallow, and it's really been nice to have that flavor, and I don't miss the basil infused orange, whatever olive oils.
Well, with the tallow, we found we could get free fat from a butcher. And so my son, he picked up, I don't know, what was it, like 50 pounds or something
Or more, yeah.
of fat. And then we ran it through our meat grinder. We got a nice big 1-horse meat grinder. We make our own ground beef and such. And we ground it up, and then we put it into a pressure cooker. And we found that that was very effective way of rendering out the tallow. We made Um, I think we had 6 number 10 cans. Those are those, you know,
Like gallonish.
yeah, close to a gallon number 10 can. We made tallow, which we then use. So basically for free. You didn't have to go out and buy it.
Wow. So overall, do you feel like you save money eating this way?
I think it's probably a push, because on the one hand, we have far less waste. When with vegetables and things, there's just a tremendous amount of waste. We have far less waste, and we shop very very carefully. Even today, okay, there's a local sale, and no, it's not grass fed, but they had sirloin tip steaks, and they're on sale for $4.46 a pound. So we picked up 30 pounds, and that will be, we'll package those up and we'll use them in sous vide and have them for breakfast and what have you.
Yeah, steak and
Or
eggs for breakfast. Yeah.
steak and eggs. That's a pretty tough breakfast. That's yeah. There's a restaurant supply place locally, and when their meat is close to expiration, the price it can get as much as 75% marked down. And so we'll buy it, grind it, package it, and then we have that in the freezer for later. So I've never really looked at, are we saving money? Are we spending more? But it's not. If we were to simply go out and order steak all the time at a restaurant, and yeah, it would cost us a tremendous amount more. Or if we didn't shop wisely, it would probably cost us more. But I can eat. I could literally live on sardines. And what's a can of sardines cost? Two and a half. So I could live on um, $10 a day in sardines. Sardines are cheap. The mackerel is cheap. Ground beef is cheap. You don't have to eat ribeye. I know some people think, oh, you got to eat fatty beef. Well, ribeye is fatty, but you can make your hamburger fatty too. Now we've literally, when we grind our own, we'll add in fat, and so I like, and some people would, the fat fearers in the world will die when I say this, but I like to mix it at about 60-40, where I have about 60% fat and 40% lean, and almost like a sausage, thick. And then when I cook it, I then pour off the additional fat, and I use that for eggs and what have you in other meals. We put it in what they call a ramekin
Mm-hmm.
dish, and that stays on the stove. And so we don't buy. It takes time though to learn. We use a lot of pork panko, and for those who don't know, you can go to the store and you can buy um, pork rinds. They're puffed up pork skin. But what we do is I bought 75 pounds of the unpuffed pellets from an outfit here in the United States, and then we have on our website, we have instructions on how to turn those using either a microwave or an air fryer into puffed up pork panko.
With
And I like to do
no
it.
seed oils.
Yeah, I like to do it because we have no seed oils that way.
Nice.
You go to the store and you buy the pork rinds. If you're going to look, they're going to be in some sort of a seed oil that they've popped them. But we have no seed oils, and so I can take. It's real simple too. I'm going to describe it here. You take a paper bag, pick a handful of these pork pellets, and you can buy them. Amazon sells them too, but we buy them. When you buy 75 pounds, they're way cheaper. Put them in the paper bag, fold the lid on it, put it in the microwave for 3 minutes. Boom, you got pork. They puff up. Now, if you want to turn those into panko, which you can use like a breading, you then run those through the meat grinder, and it turns it into a finely ground pork panko, which we can use for making bread-like products, or these sorts of things.
Nice.
Yeah,
Wow. So, like, when you put it in the microwave, that's really like microwaving popcorn, right? Putting it in the
it's
bag.
just that was kind of my inspiration. Well, what we did, we came up with an air fryer method first, and then we had a lady from a nearby community who was referred to us by one of her healthcare providers, who sent her to us to talk because she needed to lose weight. And so we had talked to her about chaffles, which are a waffle like made with Camille. Help me with the ingredients: eggs and pork panko and
Cheese.
cheese. Yeah, and then you put them in a waffle iron, and it makes kind of like a waffle. And then our website, we've actually added a leavening to them so that they're not so rugged. um, but she wanted to do that, but she didn't have a she didn't have a air fryer. So I'm like, okay. So I went to started playing with it and came upon the microwave method. And I was inspired by the way that microwave popcorn works. I don't put any oil in it at all. I just they have enough oil in their skin. Just put it in there. Initially, I used to pin it closed with a wooden toothpick, but you don't even have to do that. You can just fold it over, and it works in 3 minutes.
Oh, nice. So, Camille and Scott, at this stage, this is the way it's going to be for you guys. You're just going to continue with this way of eating and with the walks every day.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, what we're trying to do is okay. We're getting older, and people talk about the squaring the curve. That is your quality of life versus the length of life, longevity. And you figure your quality of life slowly decreases, and it kind of has this long curve, and then eventually you're done. You're done. Well, what we want to do is we want to keep our quality at the very highest level until the very end, and then when we hit the end, we want it to drop right off, and we want to square that curve. And so that's our goal. And I can't remember who it might have been, a Tia or somebody who actually coined that phrase of squaring the curve, but that's what we're aiming for.
Nice. So, if someone came to you and said, "Okay, I want to start carnivore. What do I do?" What would you tell them?
Baby steps. Start with what you can manage, and there's um, there's Guns N' Roses has a song, and this is where I get emotional, called "Mr. Brownstone." And in that song, there's a line which is completely unrelated to this, but it's I used to do a little, but a little wouldn't do, so a little got more and more. Um, I can't remember the exact words, but I still do a little anyway, a little more than before, or something like that. Anyway, but that's what you have to do. Anyway, you have to. That line was tremendously motivating for me as I moved on the on ramp and went down this metabolic journey. But you got to do what you can do sustainably. For Camille, that's different than for me. She can't do sardines every day. She can't stomach it. She does avocados. Okay. Um, okay. That's pretty good for her as well.
Or
Got a lot of good fats. And she needs more fiber, I guess. So she gets some fiber that way. But she couldn't do the sardines. So that would be a non-starter for her. If you can't, well, we have a friend who's she wants to do carnivore, but she just can't eat meat. She just doesn't can't. So we're like, okay, well, do fish, do cheese, do
egg.
eggs, yeah, and do those things, and maybe down the line you'll find that meat is more palatable, because that's another thing we found is that our palates have changed tremendously and and repeatedly. Camille used to hate sausage, and now she likes it a lot. There are some things that I didn't used to like that I eat now a lot. Um, our palates change, and I think that, well, like I said, I find myself being drawn as a snack to sardines, and I suspect that our gut biome is probably influenced by what we eat. But I think it goes full circle, and our gut biome, I think, also influences what we want to eat. So I think as you eat whatever it is that you're eating, your gut biome will, as it changes, will then start to have you crave those very foods.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, So, Camille and Scott, how can people reach out to you? How can they find your website? And do you have any other way of getting in contact?
We do have a spot. We tend to be kind of reclusive. So we're not super wide open. I mean, I'm on X, but not very much because the amount of vitriol in X and in social media is is not good for me. Um, I don't like it. But on our website, which is it's improvisational hyphen keto hyphen kitchen.com, and we have a lot of recipes there that are and we've continued to add some new ones that are some are keto, some are straight carnivore, and we have some where we have the same item and we have it in either flavor.
And there is
Um,
a feedback form on that where they can contact us.
yeah, it doesn't come directly to us, and we don't check it all of the time, but we do have a feedback form, and um, we have a really neat page on there from Dr. Bickman, who's out of BYU, who takes a look at this diet as it relates to what is called the Word of Wisdom, which is what his university is. It's an LDS university, and they have health guidelines, and so it juxtaposes what he's found in terms of health with those health guidelines. It is very interesting, and he wrote to us and gave us that, which we have posted there too.
Oh, nice. Um, all right. Well, I'll link to your website in the show notes. Um, Camille and Scott, thank you so much for coming back on and letting us know how things are going. I really appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure.
We appreciate the opportunity to share